What if the moment you've been dreading becomes your greatest triumph? What happens when you stop running and face your demons head on? 3 weeks later, I stood outside the Carter Industries annual gala, the event where the elite gathered to celebrate wealth and power, where Grant would be standing beside his mother, accepting accolades for their latest philanthropic venture, where Jennifer would be lurking in the shadows, waiting for her moment to step into my life. Margaret had advised against this public approach, but I knew the Carters. They thrived in darkness and private deals and hidden cruelty. Sunlight was their enemy. I walked through those doors in a black dress that showed my small but growing baby bump. Heads turned. Whispers erupted like wildfire. Mia Carter, the unstable wife who had been removed from the mansion, was crashing the most important night of the year. Grant saw me first. His face went pale, then red with rage. He moved toward me, but I held up my hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice carrying across the ballroom, "I apologize for the interruption, but I have something the Carter family needs to hear." Victoria stepped forward, her expression icy. "Security, remove this woman immediately." "I wouldn't do that," Margaret said, appearing beside me with a briefcase. "Not unless you want every major news outlet to receive copies of what we have. And trust me, Mrs. Carter, they're very interested in this story." Grant's jaw clenched. "Mia, don't do this. We can talk privately." "Like you talked to me when you locked me out?" I asked. "Like you talked to me when you froze my accounts? When you planned to have me declared mentally unfit? When you forged my signature on documents?" The crowd gasped. Phones appeared, people recording everything. "You're delusional," Victoria hissed. "Everyone knows you've been unstable. Grant was protecting himself from your manipulation." "Then explain these," Margaret said, projecting images onto the large screen behind the stage. "Grant's dissolution plan, the forged prenuptial agreement, the edited photographs meant to paint me as unfit, the emails between Grant and Victoria plotting my destruction. And finally, the letter to Jennifer." 2 years, I said, looking directly at Grant. "You've been planning this for 2 years. You made me believe I was losing my mind, that our marriage was failing because of my inadequacy. You let me blame myself while you and your mistress plotted my removal." Jennifer tried to slip toward the exit, but Harper blocked her path. "Stay," Harper said coldly. "You're part of this story, too." Grant's composure cracked. "Mia, please, this got out of hand. My mother, she pushed me into this. I never wanted to hurt you." "But you did hurt me," I said, and tears finally came. Not tears of weakness, but of release. "You took the darkest moment of my life, my grief over my sister, my struggle with depression, and you turned it into a weapon. You took my trust, my love, my loyalty, and you threw it away like garbage. For what? Money? Control? A woman who was willing to help you destroy me." "I loved you," Grant whispered, and for the first time, I saw real emotion in his eyes. Regret, pain, loss. "I still love you. I was weak. I let my family control me. I let their fear of losing money cloud everything. But the baby Mia, our baby, changes everything. I want to fix this." Victoria grabbed his arm. "Grant, don't be foolish. She's trying to manipulate you." He shook her off. "No, Mother. You manipulated me. You've controlled every aspect of my life since I was born. Who I married, how I ran the company, what I was allowed to feel. I'm done." The ballroom was silent, everyone watching this family implode in real time. "Mia," Grant said, stepping closer, "I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I've destroyed everything we had, but I'm begging you, give me a chance to make this right, for our child, for us." I looked at this man I had loved, this man who had been both my partner and my destroyer, and I realized something important. His love had always been conditional, based on convenience, based on what his family approved, based on maintaining control. That wasn't love. That was ownership. Part 5. The New Beginning. What happens when you choose yourself over everything you thought you wanted? What if walking away is the bravest thing you can do? I stood in Margaret's office 2 months later, signing the final divorce papers. The settlement was substantial. Margaret had negotiated brilliantly, using the evidence we had gathered to force the Carters into a corner. I received $20 million full custody of our baby, and a binding agreement that Grant's family would have supervised visitation only. More importantly, I had my dignity back. Grant had tried everything to change my mind. Flowers, letters, appearing at Harper's apartment, begging for another chance. He claimed he had cut ties with his mother with Jennifer, that he was going to therapy, that he wanted to be the man I deserved. Maybe he meant it. Maybe he really was trying to change. But I had learned something crucial through this nightmare. I couldn't build my life around someone else's potential for growth. I couldn't sacrifice my peace, my safety, my child's well-being on the hope that Grant would finally become the partner I needed. Some bridges once burned can never be rebuilt. "How are you feeling?" Margaret asked as I signed the last page. "Free," I said, and I meant it. Harper threw me a small celebration that night. Just the two of us, and my growing belly sitting on her balcony, watching the city lights. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had stayed?" Harper asked. "If you had accepted his apology?" "Every day," I admitted, but then I remember that moment in the foyer when he looked at me with such coldness, when he chose his family's money over our child. That moment showed me who he really was. Not the man I fell in love with, but the man he had always been, underneath the charm. "You're going to be an amazing mother," Harper said, squeezing my hand. "I'm going to try," I said. "This baby deserves a parent who chooses them first, who fights for them, who shows them that love isn't about control or conditions." 6 months later, I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. I named her Elena after my sister. Grant came to the hospital, asked to hold her, and when I saw tears streaming down his face, I felt a strange mix of sadness and peace. He had lost so much because he couldn't stand up to his family, because he valued power over people. That was his burden to carry, not mine. "She's perfect," he whispered. "Mia, I know I can't undo what I did, but I want to be in her life. I want to be better." "Then be better," I said gently. "Not for me, not to win me back, but for her. She deserves a father who shows up, who does the work, who proves through actions, not words, that he's changed." Grant nodded, understanding this was the only path forward. As I held Elena that night in my new apartment, the one I had bought with my settlement money, I thought about everything I had survived. The betrayal, the cruelty, the battle to reclaim my life, and I realized I had learned 3 profound lessons. Lesson 1. Your past pain does not define your worth. Grant and his family tried to use my history of depression as proof I was broken. But seeking help when you're struggling is strength, not weakness. Healing is courageous. Never let anyone weaponize your journey toward wholeness. Lesson 2. Love without respect is just control wearing a disguise. Real love means choosing your partner, even when it's inconvenient, even when family pressures you, even when money is at stake. If someone's love for you depends on circumstances or approval from others, then it isn't love at all. Lesson 3. Sometimes walking away is the greatest act of self-love. We're taught to fight for relationships to never give up, but there's profound wisdom in knowing when something is beyond repair. Choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. It's showing yourself the love you deserved all along. I looked down at Elena sleeping peacefully in my arms. She would grow up knowing her mother fought for her, that her mother chose dignity over comfort, that her mother rebuilt her life from ashes, and maybe someday when she's old enough I'll tell her the full story. Not to make her hate her father, but to teach her that she never has to accept less than she deserves, that her voice matters, that her boundaries matter, that she has the strength to walk away from anything that diminishes her light. The mansion, the money, the Carter name, none of it mattered anymore. What mattered was this: I was free, I was whole, I was home, and that was everything. What happens when the man you trust most becomes your greatest enemy? What if the moment you share your joy becomes the moment everything falls apart? I stood in the marble foyer of our $12 million mansion, holding the ultrasound photo with trembling hands. 10 weeks pregnant, our baby, our future. I had rehearsed this moment 100 times, imagining Grant's face lighting up with that rare, genuine smile I fell in love with 5 years ago. "Grant," I called out, my voice echoing through the cold emptiness of our home. He emerged from his study, his jaw tight, his eyes distant. Something was wrong. The air felt heavy, like a storm about to break. "I have something to tell you." I began holding out the ultrasound image. "We're going to be parents. I'm 10 weeks along." The silence that followed was deafening. Grant stared at the photo, but his expression didn't soften. Instead, his face turned to stone. He pulled out his phone, made a call, and said just 3 words: "Do it now." Before I could process what was happening, 2 security guards appeared at the door. Men I had never seen before, strangers in my own home. "Mrs. Carter, you need to leave the premises immediately," one of them stated robotically. "What? Grant? What is this?" Panic rose in my chest. This had to be some kind of misunderstanding, some terrible joke. "You're no longer welcome here, Mia," Grant said flatly, avoiding my eyes. "The locks are being changed. Your access to all accounts has been suspended. You have 30 minutes to gather essentials." My legs nearly gave out beneath me. "Are you serious? I'm pregnant with your child. How can you do this?" 29 minutes, he replied, turning his back on me. I grabbed what I could, clothes, documents, my laptop, throwing everything into a suitcase with shaking hands. The guards watched my every move. When I reached for my jewelry box, one of them stopped me. "That stays Mr. Carter's property." 30 minutes later, I stood on the street outside the iron gates of what had been my home. The mansion loomed behind me, lit up like a fortress I could no longer enter. My phone buzzed, a text from Grant. "Don't contact me. My lawyers will be in touch." I called the only person I could trust. "Harper," I whispered when she answered. "I need help. Something terrible has happened." What if the betrayal you discovered was just the beginning? What happens when you realize your entire marriage was built on lies? Harper's apartment felt like a lifeboat in a hurricane. She made tea while I sat on her couch, still in shock, trying to make sense of what had happened. My husband had thrown me out. The father of my unborn child had discarded me like trash. "There has to be more to this," Harper said, pacing. "Grant was never warm, but this level of cruelty. Something's orchestrating this, Mia." She was right. The speed of it all, the security guards ready to go, the accounts frozen. This wasn't a spontaneous reaction. This was planned. My laptop still worked, thank God. I logged into my email, and that's when I saw it. A message from an unknown sender, with the subject line, "You deserve to know the truth." Inside was a forwarded email chain. My hands went cold as I read. The emails were between Grant and his mother, Victoria Carter, the matriarch of the Carter Empire, the woman who had never liked me from the moment Grant brought me home. "The pregnancy changes everything," Victoria had written 3 days ago. "If she has that child, she'll have legal claims to the family trust. We need to act before she gets further along. I've contacted our legal team. We'll have her declared mentally unstable. The hospitalization records from her past will support our case." My hospitalization records. I felt sick. 7 years ago, before I ever met Grant, I had spent 2 weeks in a psychiatric facility after my younger sister died in a car accident. I had been drowning in grief, unable to function. It was the darkest period of my life. But I had gotten help. I had healed. I had never hidden it from Grant. He had held me when I told him, promising it changed nothing. Now they were going to weaponize my trauma against me. But it got worse. Another email from Victoria. "Jennifer is ready. She'll testify that Grant has been unhappy for months, that Mia is volatile and manipulative. The affair story will be believable. No one will question Grant wanting to protect himself from an unstable woman trying to trap him with a pregnancy. Jennifer, Grant's assistant, the woman who had always been too friendly with my husband, too attentive, too present. Harper, I whispered, showing her the screen. Grant's been planning this with his family, and I think he's been having an affair. Harper's eyes widened as she read. Then she grabbed my hand. Mia, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you months ago, but I didn't want to hurt you without proof. My heart hammered. What? I saw Grant 6 months ago. He was at a restaurant with Jennifer. They were holding hands across the table. When I confronted him later, he said it was a business dinner, that I misunderstood. I wanted to believe him for your sake. The room spun. 6 months. He had been planning to leave me for 6 months, maybe longer. And I had been so naive, so trusting. I had believed in our marriage even when the warmth faded, even when he became distant. The pregnancy hadn't caused this. It had just accelerated their timeline. Part 3. The evidence. What happens when you discover your enemy's plan before they can execute it? What if the proof you need is hidden in plain sight? I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Grant's cold face, Victoria's cruel emails, Jennifer's smug smile. But beneath the pain, something else was growing. Anger, determination. They thought I would crumble. They thought I was the fragile, broken girl from 7 years ago. They were wrong. By morning, I had made a decision. I wasn't going to be a victim. I was going to fight. Harper helped me find an attorney. Not just any attorney, but Margaret Reeves, a shark in designer suits, who had built her career destroying men who underestimated women. Her office overlooked the city, all glass and steel and power. Mrs. Carter, Margaret said, studying the emails I had brought. This is good, very good, but we need more. We need to prove premeditation. We need to show a pattern of deception. How? I asked. Does Grant keep files at home? Documents, anything that might show financial planning around a divorce? My mind raced. Grant's study, his private sanctuary. I had never been allowed in there even during our marriage. He said it was his space for work, for thinking. Now I understood. It was his space for secrets. I can't get back into the house, I said, frustrated. Margaret smiled. But you still have keys, don't you? The ones you grabbed before you left. I did. In my rushed packing, I had grabbed my keyring from the foyer table. But he changed the locks. The main doors, yes, Margaret said. But what about other entrances, service doors, garage codes? In my experience, men like Grant are thorough about the obvious, but sloppy about the details. She was right. The garage. Grant never changed the code because he could barely remember it. It was my birthday. Oh, the irony. That night, Harper and I drove to the mansion. My hands shook as I punched in the code at the service entrance. The light turned green. We were in. The house was dark and empty. Grant was traveling for business convenient. I made my way to his study, my heart pounding so loud I was sure the neighbors could hear it. Inside his desk, I found what I was looking for. A folder labeled Dissolution Plan. Inside were documents dating back 8 months, financial projections for a divorce, a prenuptial agreement I had never seen with my forged signature, letters from Victoria outlining the strategy to have me declared unfit, and photographs. Photographs of me taken without my knowledge, edited to make me look unstable. One showed me crying in our garden after a miscarriage I had suffered a year ago. The caption read, "Emotional instability." Another showed me having wine with friends, captioned, "Substance abuse pattern." But the worst discovery was at the bottom of the folder. A paternity test request form, already filled out, dated for 2 weeks from now. Grant was going to claim the baby wasn't his. He was going to destroy me in every possible way, and I realized in that moment this wasn't just about money or family pressure. This was about control. This was about a man who couldn't stand the idea of me having any power in his life. A baby would tie us together forever, and Grant Carter couldn't tolerate being tied to anyone. I photographed everything, every document, every photograph, every damning piece of evidence. And then I saw one more thing. A letter in Grant's handwriting, addressed to Jennifer, and marked, "Do not send." I opened it. My darling Jennifer, soon this will all be over. Mia will be gone, and we can finally be together the way we've planned. My family has agreed to accept you once the divorce is finalized. Your patience has meant everything. I know these past 2 years of hiding have been difficult, but freedom is almost here. I love you. Always. Grant. 2 years. Grant had been cheating on me for 2 years, while I had been trying to save our marriage, while I had been hoping and praying and believing we could find our way back to each other. The betrayal cut deeper than anything else, but it also clarified everything. This wasn't about saving my marriage anymore. This was about survival. Mine and my baby's.